Uncle Tom 2: An American Odyssey is the latest film from director Justin Malone with executive producer Larry Elder, who also is in this film. It also stars Buddy Bachman, Dr. Ben Carson, Brandon Tatum, Chad Jackson, Jesse Lee Peterson, Carol Swain, and Alan West. And this film, unlike the first one, which was a collection of personal narratives of experiences from Black people of their lives here in America, this film is an actual narrative of America and how we are slowly migrating from a Judeo-Christian country into a Marxist society and how it particularly affects the Black community. Now, this film is a lot different, it's a lot more intense, and so I would shy away from young kids from seeing it, but I wouldn't necessarily say they shouldn't watch it because this film is that important, and I can't wait to talk about it on my next Conservative Take. If you're unfamiliar with the way I do my movie reviews, then please check the link right here, and that video will explain everything to you. Also remember that there will be a spoiler section where I talk about more content in the film that you may not want to know about, so please be mindful of that. So for the story of Uncle Tom 2, I'm going to give this film a 9 because there is a complete story arc in this documentary. It tells a narrative of how we've come from a Judeo-Christian country into what we are now, which who knows what that is, but it's not that anymore. At least it isn't at the level as it was at the turn of the century, and how this affects the Black community. And it takes us through different narratives that are debunked, explained, and also shown who is the person behind the curtain pulling all the levers. This film exposes that. Of course, we have our usual suspects, but there are a few in here that are different, that most people don't know. And I love how they bring in BLM all the way into the 60s and how that came out, going back to Du Bois. And it's just the same formula over and over and over again. And getting people to believe that this is not happening is the whole charade. And I love how this film does it. It's got a lot of courage in what it's trying to do, and it leaves you in a cliffhanger, so this film begs you to see more. And so I'm gonna give this film a 9 for story. So for emotional impact for this film, I'm going to give it an 8 because, again, a lot of the things I've seen in this film are familiar to me. I know this, I studied this stuff. However, there are a few things in there that are still shocking. And I will say this right here, that this film is not really family friendly, but I wouldn't necessarily oppose a child from seeing it. What I'd recommend is if you're a parent, watch the film and then know when to cover your kid's eyes when things come on the screen, because some things are utterly shocking. And so in my review at the end, I'll tell you about that. Typically I say go with caution. Here I'm gonna say go with that caveat. And so, but that aspect of it was very, very emotional. It's shocking, it's sad, and seeing how bad this country is right now in terms of the Black community, the dilapidation in the communities and how that's happened. I was just recently in my hometown of my parents' upbringing, and I heard them talking about how this whole area has just gone down and gone down. And this whole thing is going all over the country, where Blacks go into an area and then after a while, it isn't the same as it was before. Check out the film. They show actual pictures and testimonies, and it is just something we don't even think about, but you look back and say, you know what? This is a problem. And Brandon Tatum actually mentions that in the very beginning, that there must be a problem going on here. There's a problem going on. So for the category of intangibles, I'm going to give Uncle Tom 2 a 10 for the reasons I just mentioned, but also because there's so much in here that you just have to rewatch, which leads me to the next thing I have to say. But let me just get into the intangibles. The film is beautifully scored, okay? That's number one. Just like the first film, the musical score is awesome, and I can't not say that about this film. Otherwise, I'd be totally remiss. Fantastic. The direction in this film, Justin Malone does a fantastic, superb job of putting in cuts and taking in stills and exposing color imagery when it's needed to be shown, because the film is a black and white film, but he uses color strategically, and I love it. It's absolutely great. But Chad Jackson, the narrator, who's also in the first film, does a really good job of basically walking us through this whole aspect of it. And that whole narrative, I think, should be an intangible, because you don't see that a lot in some documentaries. But this one definitely has that. So for intangibles, I'm going to give it a 10. All right, so for the category watchability, I'm going to give this film a 10 because of the information that is in it. You have to watch it several times just to get what they're telling you. And some of the information is brand new, and you got to sit back and be like, whoa, wow. So I'm rewinding this thing over and over again. I watched this on the website. I streamed it just a minute ago. And yeah, it's something I have to watch again. So this is my first time seeing it and reviewing it. So I'm sure if you ask me a week from now, this will be a little different, but the information is paramount. So for my overall rating of this film, and this is something, again, this category, if you don't know, if you didn't check the link before, that link would tell you what this category means. But what it simply means is, if someone were to ask me after just watching the film, what was my thoughts of this film, that's what the score would be. In this case, I'm going to give it a 10. I don't do that very often, but this film is extremely important. I'm going to cover that a little bit in the conservative take section coming up next. All right, now for the spoiler section of this film, I'm not going to give the spoiler away in this film, the overall spoiler, because this film does end in a cliffhanger, which it's just brace yourself for it. It's incredible. And again, this is something that I've already known about way back in the day, but I'm just so glad that the producers and the director had the courage to put this on film, because it's going to shock you. But we had to sit back and look hard at this country and how we got to where we are. And if you listen to and watch writers and Chads and Larry, these are the writers of this film, their narration, and also I think Justin also is part of the writing in this, how they brought this thing through. And it's very strategic. It's very well thought out. There's no wasted scene. This movie is about 2 hours long, and every minute of it counts. It means something. They don't just put stuff in there just for show or for glitz. It's there for a reason. And when you get to the end, you say, wow, that you brought me through something, and I really appreciate that. Now, I'm not going to say more about that, even though this is a spoiler section. I could, I'm not. But in about a week or so, I'm going to do an overall reaction to this after everyone's got a chance to see it. But I will say this. Again, this film is very, very violent, but it's necessary violence because it's documentary footage mostly, okay, of violence. And I don't want to say what these images are, but they are. And so just be mindful. If you are a parent, watch the film first and decide for yourself what they should see. Personally, myself, I will watch it with my son, but I will make sure I watch it enough times so I know what parts he can't watch. He just cover his eyes and he's good. But it's just a really, 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 really powerful film. But be mindful, again, in that category alone. All right, now for my final take for Uncle Tom 2: An American Odyssey, I'm going to give this film a 4-star rating, 19.25 total points, which is extremely high if you know anything about me. And I've been giving some high scores recently, but because I choose my films carefully, I don't watch just anything anymore. I watch films that I think are going to be high value. So that's why we get these high scores in these recent reviews. But this film absolutely deserves it. I kind of underscored the first one, but I'm glad in some ways I did, because I left a lot of room for this one. This film is different than Uncle Tom 1. It's more powerful in a lot of ways, Uncle Tom 1, just because of its narrative principles. But both films stand on their own. They're both excellent films. I would watch them, if you hadn't seen any of them, watch the first one first, and then watch the second one, because it really ties in together. Even though they're not directly related, it does give you the overall picture of where we are and how we got here. And that is what this film does best. And what say you? Do you plan on seeing Uncle Tom 2? I'll leave the links below of how you can watch it right now, because the film is awesome. If you have seen it, please comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. And what are your thoughts of the cliffhanger? And please don't put that spoiler into the actual comments. Send me an email at info@theconservativetake.com. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are there. And maybe sometime I'll publish that later once people get a chance to see this film. So Uncle Tom 2: An American Odyssey, directed by Justin Malone, executive producer Larry Elder. It's fantastic. I recommend that you see it immediately. And until then, if you like what we do in this channel, we take pop culture and politics and filter it to you in a conservative manner, then please check out some more content that we have for you right